You ready? All right. Hello. Welcome to Lunch and Learn. It's so great to see you all here. My name is Jennifer Vanette. I am the Outreach Coordinator and your host for Lunch and Learn. Thank you all for joining us. My usual housekeeping announcements. I just want to direct your attention to the back table where there are refreshments and you can help yourself to those throughout the program. If you use the back door there, if you're looking for a restroom, there's one just outside of that door. And we would ask if you need to come or go for any reason to use that back entrance during Tom's presentation. And then our next Lunch and Learn, so you can mark your calendars, will be April 9th. And we will have our own chief historian, Tom Trombley, and his talk, I had to pull it out so I get it right, Cultivating Saginaw Connections, garden author Louisa Yeoman King and her Saginaw Friendships. So that should be interesting. By the way, pop quiz, does anybody know what Saginaw city flower is?
Peony.
Good job. Tom has been doing his work of getting that out there. Wonderful. Good job. All right. So today it's my pleasure to welcome Tom Mudd. I was going to say introduce, but I sort of doubt I need to introduce him to most of you all because Tom has been a prominent figure around Saginaw for quite a while, working on making sure we preserve and share our history. And that comes from a long family ethos to protect and preserve and share history, going back to the Lincoln assassination and Dr. Samuel Mudd, and working on setting the record straight about what happened during that time. So Tom and his family are long into historical work, and so we really appreciate that he has brought those efforts here to share with us today about the Saginaw Sign Park. So without further ado, Tom, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. First of all, to start, how many of you have seen the sign park? Can you raise your hand just to make sure? How many of you have seen the sign park when it's lit? Well, that's good. I feel assured. We have a special guest here today. We have Steve Jordan from Barrett Sign Company here today. And we will, his name and his company will show up a lot today. It's 1993. If you're in a business at that time and your business goes out of business, you had maybe two options. One, trash your business sign. Or two, put it in the garage or put it in the basement and store it. But you don't take that third option, which is to get the sign, restore the sign, and display the sign. That was the big difference. So it's 1993, as I said, and the phone rings. I answer the phone, and it's Barrel Line Demolition. Tom, we heard about you and you're involved with historic preservation. We're taking down the Twilight Drive-In, and we have two Twilight signs that we have put out near the curb. If you can get here within several hours and remove those, you can have them. So, to the background of music, we're getting close. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I turned it down.
So I was given about, an hour or two. Thank goodness we saved our old 1977 Pontiac station wagon. It was in the garage. So I pulled that out and I made 2 runs to pick up the sign and took it back to the house, my house. Now I had a soft spot, as many of you grew up with the drive-in movies. You could go to the auto drive-in that had that fantastic sign, a car with neon wheels that went around in a circle. It was so cool. And then you have the one that was kind of out, the Bel Air, was out Jane's. So we had three outdoor movies, and the 1948 Twilight was special. That was the classy one, the real classy one. So I take these two signs back and I put them in the garage, and then I look at it and say, well, what am I going to do with these? I don't have the wherewithal to do anything with them. They're taking up all that space in the garage. So I said, well, the Temple Theater, they have these movies that was our most spectacular place to go to the movies. I'll give Ken Wupper a call because he was the head of the Temple Organ Society. Ken said, well, we're not doing much right now, so you can store it in the basement. So I load the Pontiac up again, head over to the Temple Theater, and I put these signs in the basement on a shelf. 7 years go by. The phone rings again. Hi, I'm from the Temple, and we've sold the Temple Theater, and we're going to start some restoration. So you have to get those signs out of the basement. So it's back to the house with the signs. So I had to come up, and the light bulb thing goes off over your head. And I came up with the light bulb thing that had to do, I called the Saginaw News when the Saginaw News was really the Saginaw News. And I called the Saginaw News and said, look, I have displayed one of the Twilight Drive-In signs on the garage floor. And if you can run an article about that, I will give one of those signs to somebody who will restore it and display it outside. And I will give the other sign to somebody who can restore the sign and display it inside. Well, the listening room was over on State Street. The Rotimers were over there in about 2 seconds, ready to get that sign. And so the Rotimers got it, the outside sign. And then my paddleball and racquetball buddy, he runs the Domagalski photography over in Shields, in the oldest building in Shields. So he got the other sign. And it was absolutely amazing what the Rotimers and what the Domagalski did. The Rotimers put it on the side of their building, and they had a gorgeous mural, which you will see in the slide program at the end of the presentation. And they had a dedication when the sign was done by Barrett Sign. And so here you had the Twilight Drive-In sign, a beautiful mural, a hot rod car display, popcorn, hot dogs, T-shirts, everything. It was a wonderful night that the Rotimers put on. Then the Domagalski, he decided to take his major room and turn it into a gallery with a 50s theme. And if you went there now, around the back wall, there's the Twilight sign in all its glory. So that worked out really well. Well, at the same time, 1993, I got another telephone call. And this call was from somebody associated with the Kleinberger Company, the bean company. And they had their offices in the same building that had the bunny sign on top. And I had contacted them because they had an article in the Saginaw News where they said that they were willing to relight the Bean Bunny sign. And the Bean Bunny sign was put up by Barrett Sign Company in 1947. And they turned it off in 1985 for the usual reason, and that is neon can be very delicate, and it's up there 130 feet, exposed to the weather. So it had been off for a while. So I told them that I would try to promote the project. And I did the research first, and then I started going on a speaking tour. Sometimes I would talk about the Bean Bunny sign, and there would be chuckles in the audience, because it looked like something that was not easily doable. So Kleinberger said, we'll give you a $5,000 loan to start, but you'll have to raise the rest of the money. So fortunately, Al Riedel was going up for the Hall of Fame, to be elected to the Hall of Fame. So I used the 501c3 of the Saginaw County Hall of Fame, kind of in honor of Mr. Michigan Bean, and the money flowed in. So I had almost $15,000 to add to the $5,000 from Kleinberger so that Barrett Sign could go up there, paint the sign, change the transformers, add the neon, and do other electrical work, so that by July 4th, 1997, boom, the sign came alive. And it was difficult, well, I can't go on because that's a long, long story going from there. But here were two projects, two sign projects that were successful. And did it have an effect upon the sign park? You bet it did. So now we're going to have a different time. January 29th in 2002 was the fire that took care of the Ippo building and the Pioneer Club. In 1991, we lost the Taylor House or the Fordney Hotel. So that was really tragic. The next day, I got another telephone call. This telephone call was by Ruth Berkebine, who runs Little House Antiques on Court Street, right across from the Ippo building. She said in an outraged voice, Tom, they've dropped our sign. I said, what do you mean? Well, the Ippo sign was a gorgeous sign, a huge sign, and it came from a very, very prestigious neon company in Ohio in 1935. And neon didn't even come to America until the late 1920s. This is a very, very important sign. She said they've cut the sign down and just let it drop on the concrete. Well, I said, well, okay, I'll go over and take a look at it. Well, in that intervening one-day time, they dragged the sign like a dead carcass around on Court Street. And I can remember looking at that and saying, there's just no way you're going to restore that sign. So I went over to Steve Jordan over at Barrett Sign Company. And Steve came over and took a look at it. And he said, this is a lot of work. You got to rebuild this huge structure. So he said, that's about an $9,000 job. I said, oh man, I don't know if we can raise that kind of money. So what Steve has done over the years made very little profit on the kind of work they did. That's why I thank Steve without his ability and to restore something and make that little profit, I don't think the sign park would have worked out. And so Steve looked at it and said, look, I will take $4,000 off of this if we can just do the sign a little bit at a time, which they did over almost a 1.5 or 2 year period. And during that time, I was contacted by Sally Ipple Haynes, the wife of Dick Haynes. And they said that they want to help raise money for this. So they contacted all their former workers. And that was an additional income that we got for that project. And so the Ipple sign was, and I got a date here, it took almost 2 years, as I said before, and by 2006, we were able to have a restored sign put up. And then Ken Westland stepped in. Now Ken is the man who owns the new Ipple building. The new Ipple building hadn't been built. So we got a steel pole. I think that pole came from Ken Westland, the big steel pole. And we put up the Ipple sign in a plaza that was designed by Ken. And so we put the sign up even before the building was built. He provided the electricity for the sign, and it cost him many thousands of dollars for the little park that he built around the sign. Just incredible that we had that kind of cooperation from him. Yes, the Ipple sign came from the Art Deco company in Lima, Ohio, and that led to another very important project, and that had to do with the Mooney sign. Now, I'm not a West Sider, but if you were a West Sider on a hot summer day, where are you heading to? You're going over to Mooney's. So we heard that the Mooney sign had been trashed, and so I figured, well, there's no reason to go out for that. But here again, the Saginaw News helped, because the old Saginaw News carried so much community with it. And the rumor was that it was trashed and thrown in a field. Well, I got another phone call. And the phone call was by Stan Myers. And Stan said, well, when they had the auction, when that closed, he bought both of the Mooney signs. I think we still have one Mooney sign in back. So we bought both of the Mooney sign, and he said, I will donate the sign. And that's something about the Sign Park project. Every sign has to be, that's donated, free of cost. There's no cost. It must be near 50 years old. And in other words, you just can't have any sign up there. So we went over, I remember the day that we went over to get both of those signs. And we put up the Mooney sign. And the Mooney sign was, the Mooney's itself was run by there was the 6 stepsons of Mrs. Mooney, and she ran that from 1950 to 1985 after her husband died, and it started in the 1920s as a creamery. I didn't know we had a creamery in Saginaw, but if you were on the west side, it was such a very, very popular place. And Ken McIntyre is the one who led the effort to get the money. Ken put in $2,500 of his own money. He was one of the owners, one of the people who ran it. The sign fund from the Saginaw Community Foundation put in $1,000. Barrett Sign put in $1,130. Ken Westland put in $500. The Antique Society also very supportive of the sign park, $300. And the Mackinac Trail Questers, a wonderful group of women who put in $250. So we had a restored Mooney sign. But then the big one hit, the Brensky sign. Now, it's wonderful that the Castle Museum had the Brensky sign in storage at the Modart building. When they destroyed that plumbing place over on West Genesee, when they destroyed that, the sign art company took the sign down and they gave it to the Historical Society and they stored it. So the Historical Society donated that sign for us. And again, we had Ken Westland put the pole up, which is very expensive, a huge steel pole. And the sign, when we first went in there, was very tricky because it was such a huge sign with 6 drips, I believe 6 drips we had on it. And it's been difficult over the years to maintain that particular sign because of its placement within the park. The parking lot is so popular now, it's hard to get a day when you can go in there with a big truck, with a bucket truck, and have the people go up and work on the sign. Well, the sign came from Don Brensky one morning. It was a Sunday or a Saturday morning when he and his wife were having breakfast. And he was thinking, business has been kind of slow. What could we do to bring it back? And she said, well, why don't we have a dripping faucet? Because that seems to be if you get a call from a plumber, that seems to be one of the big reasons for the call. So there are other signs. There are other drip signs in the country, maybe 2 or 3, but they're all small. This is a huge sign and a big project that was so well done by Barrett Sign Company to get it up. So here we had 2 signs, but the big thing that happened here was the kind of promotion we got. Here's Preservation Magazine. Preservation Magazine goes out to tens of thousands of people all over the country. And they put this on their front page leading into their magazine. And they have a little blurb on the bottom that says, when the Brensky building in Saginaw, Michigan was razed more than a decade ago, workers salvaged its 20-foot high neon sign, an advertisement depicting a water faucet Last summer, the Saginaw Valley Historic Preservation Society raised the money to have the 1958 sign removed from storage and restored. The society installed it in a parking lot and near other salvage signs, creating an outdoor museum. Okay, that we started to get this mention of, well, you've got the Ipple sign and you've got the Mooney sign, and now you've got the Brensky sign. And how can we expand that? Well, with the support of Saginaw News, which, by the way, was in the Ipple building. Those were the days when you could actually go up and talk to somebody from the Saginaw News. That you could actually walk into an office of the Saginaw News. So there was a push here, not only nationally, but also right here in Saginaw, saying, why don't we expand and have a historic sign park? And I think that's when we started actively going out and searching for signs. We didn't have to do a lot of that, though, because a lot of people were coming in and saying, hey, you want a sign? So there are 21 signs currently in the park right now. They're either on the Ipple building, in the Ipple building, or in the parking lot. And we have to thank the city of Saginaw. You know, I never thought the city of Saginaw would allow a park in a city parking lot. They were very, very supportive of it, which really, really helped us along. Well, we're not quite through yet. The LaSalle sign on South Washington, on the 100 block of South Washington, that's where the LaSalle Bar and Restaurant was. And what a glorious sign. It's got grilled steaks on one side in neon, and what is that other, chop suey? Chop suey was very popular back in the 30s and 40s. Even in our home, chop suey was a big deal. It's a gorgeous sign. So as a teacher at Saginaw High, I had some buddies who were Greeks. And one of them at one of our get-togethers said, well, you know, the Greek festival's coming up, and our 75th anniversary of the Greek Orthodox Church is coming up here soon. So maybe if you talk to somebody, they'll maybe support a project for you. Well, we had the land bank from the city donated the sign. And so we had the sign, and then the committee for the Greek festival came forward, and they said, we will give $5,000 for the restoration of the sign, but that wasn't the end of it. Once that sign was put up on the building and restored, there are only 5 Greek bishops in the United States. Well, one of them came from Detroit with an entourage. And on the day we had a dedication, there was this huge crowd in the parking lot. We had the daughters of Mr. Wright, who ran the Zenith sign company here in Saginaw. We had the daughter of Nick Magas, Greek, who ran the LaSalle. So we had a Greek owner of the sign, a Greek business, Mr. Wright from Zenith Sign Company, who built the sign, and then we had here the bishop and all of these luminaries from the Greek church there for a big dedication. It was quite a day. And then the Aubrey sign. How many of you remember Aubrey's Cleaners? That was one of our biggest dry cleaners here. And the Aubrey name goes back all the way to 1890 when Jules Aubrey ran a tanning business and a dry cleaning business there. Later on, the Hoffmans took it over in the 1950s. But that is a spectacular sign. One thing Barrett Sign had to do was they had 244 incandescent bulbs, and they flashed in sequence with a chaser that made the arrow on this sign go like this. So you had this moving arrow, and it's really worked out well. We went LED. We purchased, I think they cost about $7 or $8 a bulb, almost $10 a bulb. But we put up 244 LED bulbs in there, and it's worked out really well. We got the Aubrey sign from the Castle Museum. They had it in storage. And they also had the Burdick Seed House. If you remember the Burdick Seed House, it was in a beautiful building, a beautiful wood building that was torn down there on the campus of St. Mary's, which is still painful to me today. It was a gorgeous building. But so here we had the Brensky sign, the huge Aubrey sign with its chasing arrow, and the Burdick Seed House sign. But then Mr. Westland, he had a tough bargain. On both the Brensky sign, the Brensky pole, we had to go underground. It's very expensive to tunnel underground to put conduit in for these signs. So we had to add that to it. And the Aubrey sign, about an extra $1,000. It's amazing how we raise money for this. And that's because, it's great to have an idea and to promote an idea. But you can only do that if people buy into it. So we've had so many people buy into the sign park idea. And that's how we raised the money. It was, as I say, Barrett Sign wasn't making a fortune doing all this work. Practically all the signs that I've mentioned, and so many of the signs in the sign park, were done by Barrett Sign. How lucky we were to have a sign company within a couple of blocks away. And so now we're dealing with two smaller signs of great significance. I was working over at the Cushway home one day when Harold and Irwin Sebald dropped by with the Sebald sign. Now, you might remember the Sebald Bakery was a very fine bakery at 1901 Court Street. And that there had been a bakery there all the way back to the early 1900s. So they moved from there to State Street, 4880 State Street, because they didn't have any parking. It was such a popular bakery, but they didn't have the parking. And so they brought this sign in, and it was a plastic sign. And I'm thinking, well, it's not as good as neon. And it had not incandescent, but fluorescent. It had very thick, beautiful plastic with that fluorescent signs in the interior. And I thought it was second nature, kind of like a step down in importance. I found out later that this was going to be a transition period from neon signs to non-neon signs that were less expensive to take care of with that heavy plastic and the bulbs in the interior and away from the weather. And it was just a gorgeous sign. And even more important than that was that we had Arthur Hill High School. Anybody from Arthur Hill here? Okay, well, the Arthur Hill had a class reunion, 1951 class reunion, and they decided to take all the funds from their reunion that were left over, and they paid for the sign. And I think if I look here, also, the Antique Society put in $600. The Arthur Hill class of 1951 put in $500, and then we had the FBI came in with $200.
Oh my God.
And Don Sebald had $125. But I look at this. I look at this sign today, and I can remember when they walked in with that sign, and I thought it was a second nature sign. It's a gorgeous sign. And thanks to the Arthur Hill class of 1951. Well, that didn't stop with Arthur Hill. Don Morey, who graduated in 1951, he had an email newsletter of like 2 pages long that went out to graduates of Arthur Hill, not just from 1951, but from classes that were close to it. It was just a wonderful thing. He and his wife Roberta, they put this together with local history, with happenings among Arthur Hill people, et cetera, et cetera. And some jokes that were sick, and but then we move on to another project that was funded by Arthur Hill, and that was the Gables Tourist Home sign. Now, if you can remember, there was a side entrance to the Saginaw County Fair. And right across the street from the side entrance to the fair was the Gables. First of all, it was the Gables tourist home in 1932 during the Depression. The next year, they built a little hoses in back, and they called it a Gables Tourist Court. Then later on, they changed, got their own neon sign, and they called it the Gables Motel. And that was our first motel in Saginaw in 1957. So that was paid for by, let's see, as I say, Don Morey's class paid $2,500 raised by the 51 class for the sign. So here we've gone, as I say, we only did 7 signs, so there's 14 left. So now we have one last sign we just started working on now. It's kind of a cute sign. You might remember that over on Hancock Street off Court was a little tiny building. A little tiny building used to be the Hut Hamburgers. And so that sign has just been donated, and it's under restoration over at Barrett Sign right now. So that would make 22 signs in the sign park. And 22 signs, let me see. Of those 22 signs, these are the kinds of signs that are in the sign park. Dry goods, plumbing, a motel, a bakery, bookbinding, dry cleaning, lawn and garden, a flower shop, auto repair, 2 restaurants, 2 bars, toy trains. That's Brasser just went out of business. The Brasser did. 2 clubs, an ice creamery, a doctor, a curtain who used to do a curtain laundry. You know, people were fancy back in the old days with curtains and everything. And a music business, and a grocery store. So we've done a lot. And to show you how important this project was, our website, not a website, but the Saginaw News site reporting on our projects was picked up by the Route 66 of Missouri. And they have a neon, a big neon thing to establish neon all along Route 66, the old motels and hotels and all the businesses that were around 66. So the Route 66 Association of Missouri sent 2 officials here to Saginaw. And Ken Westland and I met with them over at McDonald's. And then they did a photo survey of our sign park, went back, met, and they picked St. Robert, Missouri as being their version of the Saginaw sign park. So right now in St. Robert, Missouri, they have 12 signs that have been donated to them. Several signs are under restoration. They have a park in the downtown area where those signs are going to go. I just think that's a wonderful thing to have our city and our project duplicated along famous Route 66. Cool. Very cool. So a lot of what I'm talking about here is the power of people. I just wonder all the people that have come together in so many ways to build something that's really worthwhile and wonderful. The other thing is, it's good to have somebody who can do a little neon. Because neon, you don't make money being, if you put up a sign saying, well, you know, I do neon, you're not going to make a lot of money. There's not that much a call for it. But we're lucky to have somebody who does neon locally, even though it's sporadic. We're really, really happy to have the city of Saginaw support this. One of the problems is you can build, but then you have to maintain. So there has to be a constant source of income for this. So what I did after the Bean Bunny went dead in 2009 after a horrific storm that was very similar to what happened today, except the drizzly water formed in all the neon and trashed so much neon, we had to close shop on the Bean Bunny sign. But you know, right now I look back on that and just realize how thankful you have to be for people who step forward and do these things. So maintenance fund was started by the Bean Bunny Fund with the Saginaw Community Foundation with money that was left over after the Bean Bunny sign went down in 2009. I took that money and started a fund with the Saginaw Community Foundation. You have to put in 10 grand in order to start the fund. And once that was done, then it grows every year and grows every year. And now it's a pretty hefty thing. So we use that for maintenance. Maintenance is really something that's you don't consider it. You say, oh look, this is just wonderful, but then you got to take care of it. So now I'm going to show a kind of a video here, and not a video. I don't think it moves. I think I have to move it. But some of what we've talked about, what I've talked about today, you can see right here. Hopefully it works. Well, this is me and my oldest sister Mary, who just turned 95. And there's the old Pontiac, and we're offloading. Remember I talked, I can remember that day. Here we are again, taking the Twilight sign out of the back of the station wagon. Oh, absolutely glorious what Tom and Marilyn Rodimer from the listening room have done when they did this project. And what the sign now is with Bill McDonald. When the building was sold and Tom and Marion moved to Old Town, the sign is now in storage. Bill said, well, we're gonna use that on our new custom relation place. Well, that was 3 or 4 years ago, and nothing has happened. That's almost like the Bean Bunny project. But that mural was so wonderfully done. And there's Domagalski. He did the inside of his, what he calls now the Twilight Gallery. And the whole room that sign is in is 1950s theme. Really cool. And oh boy, how many times? Anybody else in here been up on top of the Bean Bunny sign? Oh, that's right. You went up there with me. I went up there many, many, many times. I have vivid memories of that. The time we got attacked by bees that were in the sign. The time when one of the workers who was working on the sign went over there and he was sitting on the edge, and I said, do you understand? That's 130 feet down there. So yeah, it was, and for a while, we didn't have an elevator. And of course, when we got the elevator, it was scary. The elevator was, you'd look at a sign in the elevator and say, last serviced in 1936. And then it would jerk when it went up. It would go, jerk. And then it would kind of stop. You said, oh my God, the one cable is going to break. But before then, we had to walk up. So all the tools, all the delicate neon, everything, we had to walk. 1 landing, 2 landings, 3 landings, 4 landings, 127 steps. Carrying all that stuff up there, we're like Sherpa guides in the Himalayas. It was memorable.
Who took the time to count the steps?
What's that?
I said, who took the time to count the steps?
I did one day. So this is a worker working on the sign. People say, they'll come up to me and say, why don't they take that Bean Bunny sign and put it over here and put it over here? They have no idea how big that sign is. You can see the beans are 12 feet tall. Well, look at the worker. He's just swallowed up by that sign. And Steve knows all about it, and his workers know all about it. It was quite a trial to go up on the Bean Bunny sign. This was one of the great photos from the Saginaw News. I think it was Hollenbeck or somebody from the Saginaw News took this. This is the fireworks bunny. This was on July 4th, 1997. The sign was perfect. We got it lit right there for the 4th of July, huh? And the bunny hopped. Yeah. Well, this was a fun project. I started the project with with a neon bunny, which was kind of a pink bunny. And I purchased, about $1,500 worth of bunnies from Hayes Specialties. And I figured, well, it's going to be a tough sell. I don't think we're going to be able to sell too many of these. They were gone in 2 weeks. We sold tens of thousands of those stuffed bunnies. And Altrusa, that woman's group, they came up with all the designs. And they all were designed around a bean, It's a great fun project. This is Moon Bunny by Jeff Schreier. This is Northern Lights Bunny, also by the Saginaw News photographer. This is Lightning Bunny.
That was mine.
Huh?
I took that.
You took that?
Yeah, focused on Saginaw.
Oh, you did?
Saginaw. It lightning for about 15 minutes that day, and I happened to be in the right place.
Really?
Yep.
I have to add that to my record. I just didn't know that. Cool. We got to. Lightning Bunny. Rainbow Bunny. Cool. And here's the new IPPO building. Ken Westland played such a big part in all of this too. Yeah. And it's right on the site of Fort Saginaw, which makes it even more important. Here we see the IPPO sign at night. The IPPO sign is a beautiful sign. And it's been very trusty. We never even did service on the IPPO sign all these years. 20 years that neon's been. And here's you can see here's the beauty area that was paid for by Ken Westland. And there's the moon. Now Rona, does anybody in here know, somebody said Rona is like an aunt or something of the Moonies, or does anybody know that? It's a mystery. What is Rona? What is a Rona brand? We never found out. And Perkins Curtain Laundry. And here we see the IPPOs and the dripping faucet. And it was lucky Steve just found one of the problems is with technology. He had one of the drips was out, so he had to go and really work really hard to find the replacement for that when one went out. And they said the replacement was a little larger than the original, and that's because technology changes. And you get to the point where they say, well, good luck, you're not going to be able to keep it going. And Whitehead Music. I can remember they had a booth you could go in and listen to rock and roll all by yourself. There's the Gables Motel sign. And there is the bakery sign, although it's Seaball Bakery, doesn't come through too good. That's the plastic sign that I talked about. And this is Bougie's Grocery. In the old days, we had a grocery store in the neighborhood. You didn't have to go to Myers, you didn't have to go to Kroger. You could go right down to the market right in your neighborhood. Well, that was Bougie's. Most likely it's got to be Italian, Bougie's. This is the Pioneer Club. Pioneer Club was one of the oldest clubs in the United States, and of course, when the IPPO burned down, the Pioneer Club went with it. Here's the Pioneer Club sign. And here's the LaSalle sign. And the Empire Bar, that's interesting. A woman, I don't have the card here right now with remembering who that was. She was walking in East Saginaw, and she looked over at this debris laying on the ground, and the Empire Bar sign was sitting right on top. She took it home. She took it home, and later on gave me a call and said, I've got this bar sign. You want this bar sign? I said, yeah, sure. And the Saginaw News, when they were there, they had this kind of interesting sign, and maybe they put it up in their new digs, but I doubt it very much because nobody's going to be able to go in there and see it. I mean, Somebody did this sign. So here we see the Burdick Seed House sign going up before the Arby's sign was put up. Here's Burdick Seed House. This is another sign from the 30s or 40s. Here you get an idea how big the Aubrey sign is. That was a great job. The Aubrey sign is really a terrific sign. And we got Richard. Who would you say, Steve? Richard, and who else would be? Joey? 40 years, yeah. I was over to see the hut sign yesterday and had an opportunity to thank Richard for all the work he's done over the years on these signs. Well, that concludes my talk. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Anybody have a question? Oh, yeah. I just heard somebody say T-shirts. I should have worn this today. I forgot. But we paid $1,500 to buy the T-shirts, and then we raised $4,000 something on selling them. This was a big part of the Brensky project. So on the back, we have the drip is back, and we have the Brensky plumber, and then we have the faucet on the front. Yeah, we sold many of these. And this right here was a cup that the Castle Museum designed. And this was introduced, it says here, introduced by the Historical Society of Saginaw County with photos by Jeff Schreier from the Saginaw News and Sherry Green, I think. She worked with him, and they had this little project to promote the signs in the sign park. And last, this was in Great Lakes Bay magazine, and Mimi Bell had a wonderful, absolutely wonderful kind of like editorial about the sign park. And then they had 9 pages of the history of all the signs in the sign park. So it was a wonderful article in this magazine. So a lot of you might want to know about the Bean Bunny sign and where that project is. Aaron Bays owns the sign. He paid $20,000 or more to save the sign. He had 2 flatbed trucks come. One truck got the beans, and one truck got the bunny, which is 35 feet by 50 feet. People don't recognize how big that bunny is. He took them most likely to South Saginaw, to one of his plants in South Saginaw. And even though we keep talking to him and he says, yeah, we're going to move ahead, there's no moving ahead. We have no idea why we haven't formed a committee to bring that sign back. We wouldn't bring it back with neon. There's way too much neon on that sign. But we could bring it back with LEDs because LEDs are pretty close now to neon. So, if there are no other questions, we have a question. Yes?
22 signs in the park. Which one's the electrical bill?
Ken Westland. I've never asked him. I've never asked him how much it cost, but I think he most likely puts it in to his overall electric, bill. And I just thank him. I mean, could we afford to pay the electric bill for that sign? Well, what I do is I only run the sign park 3 hours. 3 hours only. Before we were running it like 12 hours, and that was costing a fortune. So, yeah, thanks to Ken Westland. Any others? Yes?
How do you manufacture a sign, especially with the script? Do they use like glass blowing techniques or
Glass tubing. Glass tubing is about as big as my index finger. And there used to be 3 neon plants in Saginaw in the 50s. Zenith Neon, which was over on, I think it was on the east side, Walnut Street maybe. And Tom DeMora was trained by the guy that owns Zenith Neon. Tom DeMora is the only guy that bends neon in mid-Michigan. There's nobody else that makes neon. There used to be 3 benders in town. Now there's 1, and we're lucky. Nobody else. The closest spot is like Clawson, Michigan. There's a guy that kind of does it as a hobby. But it used to be that you go out to the mall and all those letters you see that light up, they used to have neon in them. So there was work to be done. Now it's all LED. The only neon that we see is that neon, is the artistic neon. Sometimes people want a neon sign just because it's nicer than LED. But for the most part, we do very little neon work. Tom DeMora, who owns a neon shop right next to me, we're down on Hamilton and Lyon Street. Tom is right behind us. And he's also a landscaper. Tom Mudd knows as well as I do that it could take a year to get a piece of neon fixed. He has torches inside his business where you heat it up with natural gas and you heat the glass up and you bend it on a table. It's like glass blowing. It's an art. There are a couple schools in the country that will train you, but very few people interested. So literally when Tom stops doing this, I don't know what we're going to do. Somebody in Bay City is doing a little bit of art neon, but not the production neon like we see in these signs. But you literally heat the glass up, you blow into it, you lay it on the table, then you put what are called electrodes in the end. You vacuum the tube out, you purify it, and you add a little bit of either neon or argon gas. So the gas is excited by the electrodes and glows. And there are probably 100 different colors of tubing that go with a couple of different gases. But it's absolutely an art to make the neon. Tom gives us these signs and we fix them. Like the hut sign was in really bad shape. We tear it all apart, rebuild the structure, put new faces in it. We try to make it look as original as the old sign was. Same junky letter style. I mean, everything on it's completely original. When that sign goes up, it'll look like a brand new hut sign from 1950. That sign is going to be mounted below the dripping faucet. The neon's in production right now. There's no telling when we're going to get it back. But sometime this summer, the hut sign should go up. It'll be a nice addition to the park.
Yes. Right now it's 8 to 11. Right now it's 8 to 11. I can only keep the sign park lit according to, the time of day and the time of year. So, as it gets darker earlier, then you keep changing. So they have a timer. I go in and change the timer. So, but 3 hours max. Any other questions? Yes.
So, we have all this neon and this wonderful art that, if I'm hearing right, is just gonna go away
Well, it doesn't.
with age.
Yeah, it's not like a light bulb. It's a vacuum. It's a purified vacuum with a little bit of gas. We worked on, remember the old Saginaw steering gear sign on the plant on I-75 in Holland? We worked on that. We actually took those letters down and we put up Saginaw division letters. So when steering gear came down, there were transformers and neon in that sign from the 40s that were still operational. Neon will burn forever until it's broken. So if there's a short someplace, you might burn an end. Problem, if a bird flies into it, or in the case of the beans, we had a horrible ice storm. We had it all working. November ice storm hit that thing and did $8,000 worth of damage.
Yeah.
So neon will last forever. So we've had really good luck with this. Most of the stuff is 15, 20 years old, and we have very little repairs. We've got the Brensky faucet now is kind of driving us crazy because we can't figure out what's going on with it. You got to climb inside the sign. We got the drips working, but the top part, when it would rain, it would go out, and then it would come back on. When it would rain, it would go out. So there's a short. It's really hard to find that. Everything else, I mean, for the, 15 signs that are outside, most of them are all, you go drive by tonight, they're mostly lit. I mean, it's like 95% of it's working, which was, going into this thing, we're like, how the hell are we going to keep this thing going? And it's worked out pretty well.
Okay, so how many apprentices do you have?
Well,
Who will keep this
Well,
stuff?
we have 13 employees. We run service trucks every day, and we actually put up signs.
How
But
old
this
are these
stuff,
employees?
Oh,
I'm looking
yeah.
for somebody in the future.
all my guys can work on those signs. All my guys can work on the signs. None of my guys can bend the neon. The only guy that does neon is that Tom DeMora, and he trained with Bob Bustler, who used to work at Zenith Neon. Bob died 8 years ago. Tom has kept it going, but he mostly does it as a hobby. Literally, he fixes a bunch of neon for me, drops it off, gives me a bill. I write a check to him and I leave it on my desk for $1,000. He won't pick it up for 5 months. He doesn't care. He just does it as a hobby. So right now, he's got the hamburger. It says hamburgs. He has that pattern and he's making that neon. I don't know when we're going to get it back. The sign's going to go up without neon on it, and as soon as we get the neon back, we can put the neon on it. But there really is nobody in the area, nobody in Michigan. There might be 2 guys in Michigan that bend neon.
That's a concern.
Okay, any others?
Maybe do another question if there's one more.
No.
Okay,
Oh, Larry?
How much
We're out of room. I mean, that's one of the problems. Oh, you call it a problem. We don't have any more room. On the building, in the building. So what we've got is what we've got.
There aren't too many more signs I know of. There's the depot sign, which is across from the Cotter Street Station.
Yeah, they got that storage, and there's
Floating around, and then remember the old Howard Johnson sign on the seats?
Yeah.
and Cunningham's pharmacy or whatever. That also is there. Well, listen, thank you very much for coming today.
Oh, gosh.
Join me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. Very interesting. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.